Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming us. Thank you, Medrick, for a wonderful gathering here. People interested in the study of heart coherence. I have dedicated much of my life to the study of heart coherence. My name is Dan Winter, as you know, and I am credited in the medical literature as inventing the word heart coherence, and I'm going to show you about that. So I thought this was a nice opportunity to try to recreate a summary of the history of the study of heart coherence and what heart coherence means. So first, the pure science, and then the psychology of heart coherence. That's the subject of the lecture. Our original website with the history of heart coherence is realheartcoherence.com, and then the updated physics websites are here, Fractal GUT, the Fractal Grand Unified Theory, in which we put this together with fractality in brainwaves and fractality in physics, is the world's leading Grand Unified Field Theory, the world's leading theory of everything as rated by Grok 4, fractalgut.com, Fractal Grand Unified Theory. And that started at plotfire.com. So how did it all start? It's pretty obvious to anyone that looks at the Valentine what the heart is about. Obviously, it's about implosive compression. And it's pretty interesting that two golden spirals do make a perfect infinite fractal Valentine. Isn't that pretty cool? And that actually is what the physics is about, that implosion. And it turns out in the music literature, the study of the wave shape for love, the pressure over time of the squeeze that says I love you reaches a maximum pressure after thousands of tests at 0.618 golden ratio into the duration of the squeeze. So when you squeeze your lover to say I love you, if you did it accurately, she will feel a tingle in her DNA, or he. And the reason, the electrical reason, is the implosion generated by the perfect ratio, golden ratio, in the geometry of pressure of your touch. The physics of the love hug, that's the music literature for aesthetics, my friend Manfred Klein's.
How much is that in inches? How much is that in touch?
So what he did,
centimeter is that? How does he?
Manfred Klein's took a centigram, which is essentially very complex. It's a button on a spring, nothing else. Okay, and the way the button on a spring, then, if you put a piece of paper behind the button on a spring, you measure the change in pressure over time. So he says, feel love now and touch. Now feel anger. Ooh. Now feel joy and touch. Okay. Now, if you do that about 100,000 times, which he did, he proved in the music literature physics the actual wave shape of emotion. And from that work, I derived that was a simple set of ratios. He didn't see that, but I did. If you took the beginning of the event and the end of the event and the point of max pressure, the love touch says 0.618 golden ratio. The joy touch reaches max at 1/6. The anger touch reaches max pressure at 1/7.
That's how you got the 1/7.
You've
always thought that 1/7.
That is max destructive interference.
Always thought that 1/7.
So if you were Jesus and needed to chase the money changers out of a temple with anger, you express anger at 1/7, which is max destructive interference, notably not sustaining. So in the famous book, When Time Breaks Down, the Electrical Origins of Cardiac Arrhythmia by Arthur T. Winfrey, he answers the question your 5-year-old should have asked you, which is, where does my heartbeat come from? In fact, we now know. The map of the electric voltage waves converging at the sinoatrial node to cause the heart to beat, that's the map. So the heart is literally imploding its electrical environment to collect charge, which is otherwise known as life force. And if your heart is fractal, and that's the subject of this lecture, then that implosion of life force becomes self-organizing, and you can live on love. Live on air. So this was my friend at Crystal Hill Farm 40 years ago. And she learned, she's sitting on the piano bench, and she learned that when she focused on her heart, we were measuring the Fourier transform, the power spectra, the frequency signature of the EKG, and this is before on top, and this is after on the bottom. Okay, this is the spectrum analysis that's labeled from 0 to 40 hertz of her electrocardiogram. So before she focused on her heart on top, and after she focused on her heart on the bottom. That's what I taught to Roland McCready at the HeartMath Institute when I taught him how to measure his first EKG and how to take the power spectrum of his first EKG. And I tried to teach him what heart coherence is, but he got it wrong. But I knew that was coherence, but it took me about 20 years to learn how to measure coherence in the heart. So I knew that's the difference. And we saw that when we did this in the lab at Miller Fillmore Hospital, Plum Store. So this is a similar work we did in measuring the life force in a chicken egg. This is a live egg and this is a dead egg using the same transducer. This is when I discovered the answer to measuring what is heart coherence. And it is for this reason that I'm credited in the medical literature for inventing the word heart coherence, because I discovered this. This is called a second order power spectrum, or cepstrum. And Mederick, I believe, uses this extensively as well.
Yeah.
Yes. The second order power spectrum, you have the EKG, and then you take a spectrum analysis, FFT, which is that graph you'll see here. This is the simple FFT here, and this is the cepstrum here. So what I noticed about the cepstrum, second order power spectrum, is that the amplitude of this peak, how high that peak is, and let me play you an animation here so you can get a sense of this here. So this is the EKG on top. This is the power spectrum in the middle, heart frequency signature. And on the bottom is the cepstrum, the second order power spectrum, which is internal phase coherence. And you know how I realized that this was working? Was that anytime someone spoke their truth with passion, this peak here would rise. For example, if you say, I love you, and you mean it, this peak will absolutely go up. But if you're lying, this peak will absolutely go down for sure. In fact, this is a very functional lie detector. It is also usable in polygraphy for similar reasons. So the point is that the coherence, which is here, the internal phase coherence of your heart, the physics is that when the harmonics of the first order power spectrum are in phase, obviously the second order power spectrum is going to show that the harmonics are in phase. That's called phase coherence. So this was the profound nature of my discovery, to use the second order power spectrum to measure internal phase coherence, named and defining heart coherence for the first time on this planet. And later, when we learned that this was a functional lie detector, you need to be thinking about why. It turns out that your heart cannot gather voltage if it's not true. It's literally the biological plasma of your body is programmed to be a sharable wave. And that means that if the waveform is not able to be distributed efficiently, which is called a sharable wave, which is the definition electrically of pure intention, the inability to distribute a wave efficiently means that your heart can't gather that voltage. So literally, if your intent is not sharable, your heart can't gather coherence, which is why at the moment of death, for example, anger cannot be compressed and cannot survive death. It is literally not a sharable wave. So discovering what a sharable wave is electrically is pretty much the only definition of immortality, the ability to be distributed well. Another example is the term heaven, he ave, where the breath he of ave, charge, takes flight. Heaven. Heaven is a name for a place where charge distribution is perfect, otherwise known as fractal. And now that relates to what's called high dielectrics in capacitance of biologic architecture. But so you're getting the sense that the psychological skill to learn heart coherence is a measurement, an electrical engineering measurement of the ability to have pure intention for a very specific reason, because biologic plasma, programmed for 1 billion years, gathers survival information only based on what can be distributed efficiently. That's why, for example, if when you're dying, you're feeling anger, the anger wave 1/7 cannot be compressed, cannot be imploded, and cannot be distributed. Therefore, that memory electrically cannot pass into the compressed distribution after death named heaven, which the ancestors called the songline dreaming track, the only Aboriginal name for heaven. And the physics of that array, you've seen my fractal star mother kit. It's a longitudinal array, and in that array, they knew its ancestor memory, and later we'll see that is the physics of lucid dreaming, the ability to compress, implode, and be distributed into that coherent longitudinal EMF array, fractal, sometimes called scalar. Point being that to do compression well requires fractality and coherence.
Wait, you said heaven before was perfect.
Hey means, actually in Hebrew, hey is 5, means amorphous and space filling. That's why it's spelled H-E. Any lady will tell you he is amorphous and space filling, right? So, hey, just a way to remember it. But ave means to take flight, to fly. Where the breath of charge, hey, can ave, take flight, is literally the physics of the word for heaven. Obviously, the ability for charge to take flight requires fractal distribution, and that perfect distribution is the coherent longitudinal array we call the collective unconscious. And to enter that compressed array, which is already proven absolutely the only physics of telepathy, for sure, Karakov and Kozyrev, we know for sure that coherent longitudinal array is the only physics of high quality telepathy, which is basically the magnetic line cross points. Anyway, so now we want to learn more about what's meant by fractality. The original paper, The Healthy Heart is a Fractal Heart, was Ari Goldberger. This is a paper by Barry Citra. But basically, what he's saying is, if you take this spectrum analysis of the heart rate of this person here, notice this person has a monoatomic heart rate. And Heart Math Institute would call this heart coherence, single frequency and heart rate. Actually, they're wrong. A single frequency in the heart rate here, this person is about to die. And the reason they're about to die is their heart harmonics are exclusive. One frequency, death is coming. No, the measurement, in fact, the only and fastest way to measure immune health is harmonic inclusiveness in the heart, otherwise known as fractality. And that harmonic inclusiveness is functionally delimited by the golden ratio, because the golden ratio is the only way that internal harmonics can be inclusive and not destructive. So the solution to non-destructive compression, golden ratio fractality, is also to the solution to harmonic inclusiveness, the only functional measure of immune health in the world. If you go to a doctor and you'd like your immune health measured, functionally the only way that's done is you measure the heart harmonics and you check for inclusiveness, otherwise known as fractality. And we want to discuss that a little more later. So this is an example of our early measurement showing that the brainwave harmonics on top, That's EEG. And the EKG harmonics here were actually locked into phase. And we have devices now, iThrive.com and flameandmind.com, which measure the ability to link your heart to your brain based on that science. And we call this the marriage counselor's dream because here you see that at this moment, the musical fundamental of their heart coherence, the cepstrum on bottom left here, the amplitude of that peak is the amount of coherence. The position of that peak right left is the musical fundamental, literally the musical key signature of their heart. And lovers naturally link hearts this way. So you can measure rather quickly if people are emotionally compatible by measuring whether their EKGs phase lock this way. And the second way that makes this a marriage counselor's dream is the same thing that's happening in their EKG cepstrum here is also happening here in their HRV, heart rate variability, programmed by the breath. For example, the 0.1 hertz Mayer wave is here. So the two peaks of the HRV right there, you see the two peaks lining up. So these people are literally compatible lovers, as it were.
Are they being measured at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. This is
Making love at the same time?
No. that has been done, but in this case, it was simply a matter of two people with EKG and EEG.
Just being there.
Yes,
Doing,
sitting next to each other. Actually, holding hands works very good.
I said there must be some physical contact.
Yes, holding hands helps and hearts naturally choose to link. And the original device you're going to see a picture of was called Heart Link for that reason. So this is two hearts. Let's see if you can see the other thing to be measured here. The missing harmonic in the fractal cascade here identifies what is needed for health. It's very well known. You know, voice analysis. I have a voice limitation. Classically in voice analysis, Sherry Edwards, Jan Kunkel, Mary Soul, there's lots of voice analysis, and I'll show you some pictures. You find how to heal people by replacing the missing harmonic. And I'm sure indirectly that's related to what Medrick does as well. You find the missing harmonic and you replace the missing harmonic. This is behind a lot of the theory of heart harmonics. And whether it's breath harmonics, heart harmonics, HRV harmonics, or voice harmonics, the same principle applies. You find the missing harmonic in their voice, in their heart, and you can treat the problem. In this case, the missing harmonic is here. It is 6.25 hertz, which we found in probably most of the people in Europe. And do you know why? 6.25, 12 and a half, 25, 50 hertz.
Yeah.
50 hertz is the massive poison of Europe, of course. It is the electric grid at 50 hertz. So people who are overexposed to 50 hertz will miss 6.25 hertz in their EKG because their heart cannot touch the pain. Haven't got time for the pain. The pain is where the charge was not distributable. That's effectively the definition of pain, failure to distribute.
So you're saying 6.2 there, is it?
6.25 hertz times octave 12 and a half, 25, 50 hertz. It's a perfect octave of the pain of Europe, 50 hertz. It's not actually 50 hertz, it's bad. 50 hertz is better than 60.
Yeah.
The problem is if you're overexposed.
So have you measured the US? If it's 60 hertz, what's their missing one?
That question was already asked today. I have to say we're working on this.
Okay.
Most of this work I've done in Europe, so.
Or you could just divide it by 12 and a
You
half.
asked that?
Well, in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
To get your answer, just divide it by 12.5. And 60 divided by 12.5, that'll give you the answer.
That's right. So here is an example of the flat point in the breath cascade HRV breathing on the bottom, still point in breath, correlates to max point in heart coherence on top. So you breathe to a still point at caduceus, your breath comes to that still point, your heart coherence goes up. We designed a large number of games to play with your heart coherence, which I'll explain later. This is the original heart tuner after my heart link invention. Just maybe more pictures. This is in the history of the study of brain coherence to show you the problem which I solved. In brain coherence, the only way they could measure coherence in the EEG, and this is an example of coherence, and this is a meditator, brain waves, coherent. This is a non-meditator on top, okay? The meditator bottom left has coherence, okay? Now, how do you measure internal phase coherence? This is the problem I had to figure out to measure heart coherence. In brain waves, it was simple. You measure one hemisphere and the other, and you compare, so you can measure relative coherence between two hemispheres. But what if you don't have two hearts, but have only one? How do you measure internal phase coherence? This is the original heart tuner, which became the heart link, the original invention. I developed this at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with Andrew Junker. It's a bit of a long story. But here, just one more thing I'd like to suggest is so interesting. This is the measure of heart coherence, the substrate. When this peak goes up, you're speaking your truth. If this peak goes down, most likely you're not speaking your truth. The position of this peak, right, left here, the musical fundamental of your heart, when this peak is at 1.0, which corresponds to about 60 hertz, actually, we call that the bank manager position, otherwise known as stuck in your head. Now, when that peak moves over here, the golden ratio, 0.618, right here, we call that the kindergartner's teacher position. You measure any kindergartner teacher's heart, and their heart coherence will invariably be here, which is called permission to touch. And so the touchy-feely person is always here. The stuck-in-your-head person is always here. Invariably, we did this literally a million times. We know how to teach people by measurement who are stuck in their head to move to their heart. It's measurable, it's teachable, it's replicable, and we know the physics of why people are in their heart, their musical fundamental goes to 0.618, which corresponds to a higher heart rate. Actually, it's another interesting thing we learned from this graph.
I have a quick question about that.
Go ahead.
So when if a person, you said speaking the truth, you did when a person's passionate speaking their truth,
Their amplitude will go
Right.
up.
what if the person is not speaking truth, but they believe like a lie? Have you tested that?
Actually, that's right. But the truth is, I believe that if people passionately believe what they're saying,
It works anyway.
I think so. I believe. Now that-
What happens is when you lie, you have to mobilize a lot of energy for many things, and you cannot be centered in one true energy because you have so many things to manage to make your life.
Right.
Your life.
What if the person believes the lie,
But-
but they don't know it's a
Yeah,
lie?
If they truly believe it.
if they truly, but I agree with what Medrick said.
Yeah, no, I believe
Very
that
useful,
too.
very
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
And just another thing, this screen is the mood screen
This is
and biocoherence.
Okay.
oh yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Perfect.
So you're saying so far, if a person believes a lie, there's no data showing
that their heart
it's
will
more
hear
about belief rather than
But the
truth.
thing is, eventually the lie will catch up to them, presumably.
Well, right, but if they don't know,
It's
you know what
very
I'm saying though, right?
it costs a lot to
That's-
maintain a lie.
So-
Well, no,
So
but I'm saying, what if a person doesn't know that they're lying, like they believe that apples are oranges or something, and they really think this is an orange?
Yeah,
Okay, well, there it can get complicated.
Okay. I was wondering if you measured that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were gonna just.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, but it's good. I'm glad that Medrick is using the mood screen. That's right. So that essentially, when the geometry of your heart's music is rectilinear, you're in the conceptual mode. When the geometry of your heart's music is golden ratio, implosive, you're in the touch permissive mode. And invariably, bank managers will be at 1.0 and kindergarten teachers will be 0.618. You try it.
Rectilinear.
Tetracubic.
Square wave?
Tetracubic.
Tetracubic.
1.0. In other words, a tetracubic symmetry produces only octave ratios, and therefore max destructive interference, which is the opposite of permission to implode and the opposite of permission to touch. So octave music is literally designed to prevent touch. It's actually physics. Because octave harmonic ratios, if you do the mathematics of the cascade and do the wave interferometry equations, octave harmonics are the opposite of distribution. They're opposite of touch permission. They're perfect to put if you're a witch and you put a hex on someone, which is a shadow of the cube, it's called to fix the spell. Perfect. So when nature builds something tetracubic, ice, for example, very hex, no possibility of implosion, no possibility of charge distribution. So the witch puts a hex on you, and what that does is fixes the spell. But if the witch puts a pent on
If you
you,
repent,
and be saved.
Yeah.
No, what that creates golden ratio, and that creates implosion. And the pentacle, therefore, by initiating implosion, causes your intention to be tested. Because only that which can pass through the center of implosion is only the sharable wave. So when the witch puts a pent on you, it means that if your intention was not sharable, it will not survive the compression at the center. The same as the physics of death. Or bliss. Another example, my friend Gus, who introduced me to Bucky Fuller, he built his house as one ladder of the rung of DNA, pent, hex, and golden ratio rectangle, which is the shadow of one ladder rung of DNA. In the hex part of the house, it's where you could have secrets. In the pent part of the house, it's where you cannot have secrets. It just happens that death is where you cannot have secrets.
Can I just say one to explain what you just said before? When Dan speaks about being in a square or being in a spiral, it's a visual representation of how the waves are distributed in this recording. So if you have wave close to the one, and it says the bank manager, it means that it draws something like a square where everything is blocked and nothing can really move. But if you have squares close to the golden ratio, you find this spiral that I was speaking about this morning. And when you are into this spiral, you get into this fifth dimension, that is the dimension of scale. And so you are open to expanding or compressing your information
Or
and
touching.
your energy
Or
touching. So opening to others.
Yes.
Because to open to others, you have to expand your awareness. And to expand your awareness, you have to be on this golden ratio.
So it's a rectangle versus a square.
Yes.
Somehow. And you have all intermediate positions with different places that we put in moods. So the most open mode is the one that is locked on the golden ratio.
And you can see whether it's biology, the molecular geometry of DNA, or whether it's architecture. If it's all squares, it ain't gonna work so. Yeah.
Andrew, could I ask a question about moods? So when you look at the bar graphs in moods,
Yes.
so the one that's the highest
is the one where there is the most important energy allocated at this time. Yeah. And you can see them move during the recording.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can try and put people in a loving position and show the moods change in real time.
And this is how we did that in our early application. So when your heart musical key signature moves from golden ratio at the center to 1.0, and you had two people on this scale, you could actually teach lovers to move from head to heart and measure it. This is an example. It's literally the touchy-feely speedometer. This is from also when time breaks down. When the turning inside out is recursive, the harmonics become inclusive. You see why? This means you can implode your environment non-destructively. which is the electrical origin and definition of compassion, as in the physics of what allows a shaman to steer a tornado. It really sucks. I mean, it really implodes, and that sucks. You see? That's recursive turning inside out. So this is the fractality of the infinite stellation of golden ratio dodecadent, and that's the compression algorithm. And this is that same caduceus. The actual QRS and T wave geometric origin points in the heart wave itself, the QRS and T wave, is actually golden ratio based. Do you see? Why is the classic heartbeat golden ratio? Hello, QRS and T, because if it ain't implosive, it ain't working. And that creates the Fibonacci and cascade implosion. And that's why if you learn to breathe the caduceus fire breath, you can produce heart coherence. And this is actually, if you look at the musculature inside the heart, you can find where the QRS and T wave is coming from. And so you know what part of the heart is participating in the implosion. This was the heart tuner. These are the cascades. This is heart harmonics in black and brain harmonics in pink. Notice here the black and pink points perfectly in phase. Here, very near Schumann. So the heart brain linked up where? At Schumann. Hello. And this is turning inside out, and so yes. This is the one rung in the ladder of DNA here. This top-down view. This is the implosion. This is what the implosion looks like. This is a measurement of internal phase coherence in the EEG, the brainwave. So we were measuring brain coherence directly here. And this is the caduceus breath. So at the climax of the caduceus breath, we got a dramatic increase in coherence. That's the point here. So this is showing where eyes were closed and eyes were open. Where the eyes were closed in red, we have a dramatic increase in alpha. You see here. And this is EEG coherence here compared to EKG coherence. Again, EKG, black. EEG, red. At the moment of eye closure, we have this dramatic red peak Schumann 8 hertz alpha. Now, if you can make alpha with your eyes open, it means you can lucid dream with your eyes open. And if you'd like to know how Aboriginals make phone calls to ancestors, that's a good introduction to the physics of lucid dreaming. And our leader of the lucid dream teams here, Dahlia. But so lucid dreaming is based on this physics that when your body experiences implosive compression, bliss, death, the emission from your body's plasma converts the transverse electromagnetic at the implosion point, tuned to Planck, to longitudinal coherence interferometry, called the collective unconscious, or the grid. And to get that longitudinal emission, in Egypt was called the Ba from the Ka, Gurdjieff called it the Kesjan body, the Tibetans call it the rainbow light body. What they mean is that your aura, under the conditions of proper implosion, bliss or death, sacred sons, that compression allows your body to emit the coherent longitudinal, incorrectly called scalar, and that allows you to inhabit that fractal array, the collective unconscious, the communion of saints, ancestor memory, songline, dreaming track. That's what luciddreamteam.com is about, teaching that physics. And if the planet has enough lucid dreamers to work together, then the planet can have an immune system for astral parasites the size of galaxies. This is a problem we're dealing with at luciddreamteam.com. You're welcome. Ask Dahlia some questions later. Oh, she didn't volunteer for that. Sorry.
It's okay. I got it.
So the next part of this show is about the HRV component here. So this is just showing, remember, heart rate variability is simply the low frequencies of the heart. These are the sensor options from iThrive, and we're using these finger pulse transducers. But it's amazing what you can get from a finger pulse. And there's one thing I really want to show you. It's called power factor. half the electrical engineers of the planet who were looking for free energy, 0 point energy, screwed up and got confused because they forgot what power factor was in their electrical engineering class. Power factor happens when the voltage peak in the sine wave of your power supply is in phase with the amperage peak. The voltage is the pressure, the amperage is the rate of flow. And I'm not saying is like, it's not an analog, it is. Voltage is pressure. That's Tesla's word for it. And the amperage is rate of flow. Well, obviously, if the flow rate is not in phase with the peak in the pressure, you can't get distribution. That's called power factor. And every electrical engineer spends half his life working on power factor, like power factor corrected controller transformers. You got too many induction motors, your power factor goes to hell, and your electric bill is off the charts. But
Or Spain blacks out.
or
Spain blacks out.
or Spain like yes, yes. It's a power factor problem. But it turns out that your passion in your heart has the same issue. Did you know? And it's measurable. With so in HRV, heart rate variability, the way that's measured. This is from Patrick Baughy, who will be teaching at the next gathering here. But so if you're measuring with a pulse, a finger plethysmogram, or a finger pulse transducer, infrared penetrance, the pulse looks like this, and this is the amplitude of the heart's beat, right? But the long wave of the pulse rate is the low frequency change in blood pressure. So this is the change in blood pressure over time, measurable by a very inexpensive HRV, heart rate variability finger pulse sensor. And when you can measure the change in blood pressure over time, you get things like the Mayer wave. You know what HeartMath Institute calls heart coherence? 0.1 hertz. 10 seconds. This is the Mayer wave. So the 10 seconds here, that 10-second breath is the most important frequency of the blood. It's called the Mayer wave. If you breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, that's how you make what HeartMath calls heart coherence, a 0.1 hertz HRV, which is the LF component of the HRV. And the point is that after you can measure the geometry of pressure over time of the blood pressure and compare that to the geometry of pressure of the voltage, you can get power factor. And it turns out to be a measurement of ability to relax. Let's see if I can describe that. So here's where we did a film about power factor. The point is that with good heart rate variability measures, you can teach people relaxation based on actual power factor in the EKG. It's a very fascinating little concept. Okay, so this is all the HRV work. We're obviously not going to do all of this today, but I want to show you a few more things. This is the Mayer wave, 0.09, about 0.1 hertz. This is my equation, PlanckFire.com. Take Planck, the musical fundamental of the universe, and multiply by golden ratio. You get charge collapse. The cause and reason for the existence of gravity, consciousness, life force, all negentropy, and all action at a distance only happens if you have charge collapse, fractal impulsion, called PlanckFire.com. That's the reason gravity exists and the reason consciousness exists. It's also the reason seeds germinate. Okay? That's the motor that makes them grow. That's why the longitudinal wave of the sun triggers seed germination, because it's implosive. Anyway, this is the cascade from the equation, Planck times golden ratio. And these are the low frequencies of the spinal liquid pulse, called the sacrocranial tidal frequencies, of which the Mayer wave, 0.1 hertz, is the dominant. And if these low frequency tidal frequencies, if the spinal liquid pump is in phase and is pumping, it is clinically impossible to be depressed. Isn't that interesting? This is from the sacrocranial literature, Upledger's Center in Florida. So you teach people with heart rate variability and the breath to learn how to pump their spine liquid.
Are those two spiraling in opposite directions?
Well, actually, no. This is just showing the phase relationship between the equation and the actual spine liquid. If you research the sacrocranial literature and discover this, the spine liquid pump frequencies.
And those two slopes are at 60 degrees apart?
Well, this is the golden ratio of Caduceus from Planck.
What's that?
And if you plotted that on a dodecahedron in vortex cones, as you see in the other graphic, you would have the 60-degree light cone of the Star Mother kit. We should have brought the Star Mother kit here today. That's the vortex you get right there. Now let's see if we my scaling here. The graphics not that clear, but that's that Caduceus, and it is a 60-degree cone, and it is implosive, and it is charge collapse.
And that's an equilateral triangle, which is part of the
Well,
tetrahedron.
the fact that the vortex that nests infinite stellated dodecaecosa is a 60-degree cone is inherent to the geometry of the way a cube has a shadow identical with the shadow of a pentodeca. Obviously, the shadow of the cube is going to be 60-degree cones, right? Obviously. But it turns out that the pentodeca has the same shadow. That's why the cube fits so well in the pentodeca. We should have brought this up.
Is that because the cube is not tilted?
Then it's because the angle that necessarily tilts the cube into the dodeca.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my voice is failing, so I just want to finish briefly. But so in Dardick's book, Making Waves, he shows what it means to have a fractal heart. Psychologically, it means you can embed in the universe, you see? So he started here looking at heart rate variability as a wave upon a wave called embeddability. And how he discovered this was he was the medical doctor for the Olympic team. And he was watching any athlete who would do their exercise to max heart rate, and then they would stop. Okay? So any athlete who does this, accelerate heart rate dramatically, run like hell, and then stop. So the graph of your heart rate is a square. What he proved from elaborate, detailed study was that is a recipe for death. It is literally going to kill you, for sure. And specifically, he measured the number of heart attacks. So athletes who go sudden high heart rate and max out and then stop, that is a way to kill yourself. So many athletes were dying like flies that he had to figure out why.
Yeah.
They were dying like flies, literally heart attacks all.
It's surprising. I was never. Yeah.
So obviously, it's called warm up.
Well, you run down.
Yeah.
You're supposed to run after.
Yeah.
warm up
It's
and
but
yeah,
you know what?
Yeah.
You know what the
And that's why a lot of athletes actually work out after their games.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. But you know what the graph of the perfect Olympic heart rate is? A caduceus. So you gradually increase to max heart rate, and then you have a short rest, and then you gradually increase to 0.618 of max heart rate. And then you have a rest, and then gradually into 0.618 of that, you see? And the perfect caduceus is a map to the perfect athlete because it's heart rate variability, it's fractality, it's implosion, it's harmonic inclusiveness. You get the point? So that's the point of Dardick's entire book. And if you take that point to its graphic limit, variability in your heart links you. Here's your heart rate, and here's your breath rate, and here's your wave on a wave waving. It's called super looping or perfect nesting. It's also the map to the physics of the perfect feng shui. The bedroom is geometrically embedded correctly in the house, which is geometrically embedded in the property. It's geometrically embedded in the neighborhood. So if the map of the magnetic lines of your neighborhood and your bed are fractal like a rose, that embeddability is what enables you to couple with your environment. It literally allows you to implode the field you live in. And this is the fundamental lesson, which we call holarchy. And this is from the article goldenmean.info/holarchy. So you can see how fractal harmonic inclusiveness is the way you embed yourself in your world. Because my voice is going away here, maybe we do question or yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, I had two, but yeah, we'll do the first one. The whole, you talk about the 7/1, being anger, and we've been having conversations about like music, and you said the octave. So, do you think that if you had a chance to start again and create music, is there a scale and a number that you would use? Would it be I don't know 5, for example, or you call it a pentave or something like that?
427.
Well, first, this is the original graph from the original research. This is the shape of the way you touch someone when you say I'm angry. It was measured 1 million times. It's very real. So the touch that says anger reaches max pressure at 1/7. So the original research by Manfred Kleins is this graph. But this information here is from me only. I'm the one who discovered this was a map to ratio. And obviously this would be destructive interference, anger, and this would be constructive. Now, if you take this principle,
It's 1/5.
but
Which is 0.68.
golden ratio,
Yeah.
which means when you touch someone, they feel love because they imploded. Well, if you take this principle to its logical limit, you get spine liquid pump harmonics, HRV harmonics, brainwave harmonics, Schumann harmonics, hydrogen harmonics, Earth year, Venus year, galactic year, precessional year harmonics. In fact, you get planckfire.com, which Medrick helped, at lfi.link. We now have several hundred. Planck times golden ratio is embeddability. It's nestability, it's implosion ability, it's charge collapsibility, which is the only origin of all self-organization, negentropy, life force, gravity, and consciousness. And interesting now, exactly that is the core of fractalgut.com, the #1 unified field theory physics on the planet, rated by Grok 4, the top physics AI on the planet, thanks to our partner, Mark Rohrbaugh. But you see why? Because embeddability, fractality, charge collapse, creates the centripetal implosive force. In other words, if you're doing some squeezing, whatever's at the center of the squeezing needs to look like a rose. Then centripetal force happens, self-sorting happens, self-organizing happens. And at the center of that implosion, plunk, there's emission into the longitudinal, which is the physics of gravity and the collective unconscious. So, any more questions?
Dan, yes. Where's bliss on that chart?
Where's I didn't. You know what? Actually, you know what else is not on this chart?
Mm-hmm.
Fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why fear isn't on the chart? Fear actually does not have a wave shape. You know why?
Interference.
No. Fear is the mind killer because it's pure resistance to spin, you see. But bliss would actually be a climax here.
Mm-hmm.
Bliss is a name for the charge distribution which results from fractal compression. So always the rose has to be compressed perfectly before it can unpack.
Mm-hmm.
If the packing was fractal, then the unpacking will be, and that's what we call bliss.
And that's the perfect bloom, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And as in when they taught the Steiner kids to visualize a rose and then to draw a rose very accurately, and then they would always test if they did that correctly, if the room filled with the smell of roses.
Mm-hmm.
And the physics of why that works is very clear. The flowering brain, that implosion, creates a very specific, measurable infrared emission. My friend Callahan documented the physics of olfaction. I have seen hummingbirds smash through a window to try to reach humans in bliss in a sealed house, and I know how they smelled it. The infrared went through the window.
Mm. Wow.